Hi there guys, and welcome to another episode of the Cover Zero Show with me, your host, Simon Conboy. Today's episode is another entry in the season preview series, and we will be focusing on the Washington Redskins. Now, for those of you who haven't seen one of these episodes before, I'll be going through my projected offensive and defensive starters. Of course, we've got camp and preseason upcoming, but if the team was to line up tomorrow, this is how I suspect they would look, and I don't think there'll be a great difference between this and the opening day lineup in September. I'll then be briefly going over the schedule, highlighting what I believe are the key areas for this team to navigate their way back to the playoffs, and then giving you my projected record before finishing up with what I consider the three key areas for this team heading into 2017. If they are going to return to the playoffs, it will likely be because these areas exceed expectations or meet expectations if they're particularly high, and the season could be a letdown if they don't perform. So we'll head in with the offensive starters. At quarterback, of course, we're going to see Kirk Cousins. For me, not one of the top quarterbacks in the league. He's been very impressive statistically. However, I think he fits this system very well. I think he's got a good coach there. One of the best offensive lines. I think they're severely underrated, particularly in pass protection. They excel. He's had good catches for his time there in Washington. The numbers have been very good, and but he's not shown me that he can be a guy that can win games in spite of what's around him. He's, of course, had some games where he's imploded a little bit, other games where he looks almost unstoppable. But I do think he's a limited player, which is why he's not, struggled to get that long-term deal with this team. But I do think he'll put up good numbers, and this passing attack should be productive once again with him at the helm. Running back, I think we'll see Rob Kelly as the primary runner. I think he's a bit limited, but I think he can be an effective starting tailback. I think Samaje Perine will offer a nice change of pace. I think he'll see a lot more snaps than maybe some are expecting. They've not really stuck to one running back during Jay Gruden's time there. I think this is the guy that can help most in the passing game, and he'll have a bit more home run ability than Kelly, who I do think is a fine power runner, but I think he's somewhat limited. But I do think these will be the two that see the vast majority of the snaps. At wide receiver, we're going to see Terrell Pryor once again. I think he'll be the number one coming over from Cleveland. It'll be interesting to see how he adjusts to a new scheme. He was very impressive in Cleveland last year. I think Josh Doctson may not start the season as the number two. That could well be Crowder, but I think come the end of the season, he will hopefully for this team, as a first round pick a season ago, be able to crack that starting lineup, and I think Crowder will be a very valid number three option. Pryor showed last year, I think he's got a lot of talent as a wide receiver. He could be a number one for sure. Doxson, we need to see something for. I think Crowder's one of the better third options in the league, but I do believe he'll start as the two. At tight end, Jordan Reed, one of the top receiving threats in the league at the position. Supremely athletic, great talent, huge threat in the red zone. Maybe could do some work on his blocking, but frankly, such a dangerous receiving weapon. I expect to see him utilised in a number of ways. Paul Niles will be the designated blocking tight end, I suspect. They'll utilise him. It's that kind of scheme. They'll use a lot of tight ends. I think he'll see more of the field than some people may suspect. Offensive tackle, possibly the best pairing in the league. It's certainly in the conversation. Trent Williams, who's somehow criminally underrated. This is without doubt one of the best tackles in the league. Fantastic pass blocker, very good run blocker, just a great all-pro caliber player. And Morgan Moses, who re-signed with the team this off-season, he has been very good on the right-hand side. At guard, Brandon Scherf, who was really improved last season. I think he had a Pro Bowl caliber campaign. Bear in mind, he's only not playing at right tackle because Morgan Moses has been that good. And Sean Laval, who played well last season, and at centre, Spencer Long. These five work really well together. If there's no injuries, I have no doubt this is going to once again be one of the best units in football. And the kicker, Dustin Hopkins. This unit I like mainly because of that line and the sort of variety that they've got at the receiving position. Jordan Reed and Terrell Pryor, both big guys. They're red zone threats. Doxson could end up filling that role as well. maybe not quite got the skill set of Pryor, I don't think, but he was a first round pick. I think he'd be a solid possession receiver. If he can offer them what Pierre Garçon did, then they'll be incredibly grateful and very productive. Pryor, I think, could be a star, depending how quick he picks up the scheme. And as I say, I think Crowder's one of the best third options in the league. He's a solid player. He's a good route runner, and I think when you move him about, he can be lined up at a number of positions and be effective. He's good quickness, good route runner, and I like that their ability with Cousins there. I think they can be very productive. The run game is the question mark for me. It's not been great the last few years. How much they can get out of that will determine just how high powered this group could be, but I certainly think they're going to put up numbers, particularly through that passing game. The defensive side of the ball, a lot more question marks, I think. Defensive end, I suspect we'll be seeing Jonathan Allen and Terrell McClain. Allen was a steal for me in the draft. I think he was one of the top players available in the entire thing. Of course, injury concerns knocked him to a position where really the Redskins got an absolute bargain at a position of need. I think he'll be a very good player in the long run. Terrell McClain was one of the Cowboys' better defensive linemen. How well he adjusted his scheme and how quickly will be interesting to see. These two could be very, very good this year. It might take a while, however. And at nose tackle, I suspect we'll see Stacey McGee. That's a bit of an experiment for me, a bit of a risk. This position could be a problem for them. They have had problems against the run in the last couple of years. Outside linebacker, Ryan Kerrigan, been very, very productive as a Redskin. One of the more underrated players in the league. Not a dominating pass rusher, but he's certainly effective. He plays the run well as well. Preston Smith, I suspect, will get the other spot, but this, I think, is an open position. It could well be won by somebody else, although Smith did play okay when he was on the field last year. Inside linebacker, Mason Foster and I suspect Zach Brown. Foster's a decent run player. He's got good instincts and is a solid tackler, but he's not great in coverage. Zach Brown's more athletically talented, but up until last season, he hadn't been particularly productive. The hope there will be that he can replicate what he did last year with the Bills, where he was a decent player. If so, these two could certainly do a good job against the run. I do worry about them in coverage, however. At corner, Josh Norman, possibly the best zone corner in the league. Played well last season. I think it took him a while to find his feet, but being asked to play a bit more man, but he was playing very well the second half of the season. Bashard Breeland will be the number 2, and I do think Fabian Moreau, who I thought offered great value, could end up taking that spot. I've got no doubt Moreau and Breeland will be the 2 and 3. But I think Moreau's just got a bit more talent. If this team decides to play a zone blitz type scheme, I think Moreau and Norman could be a very, very good pairing, and Breeland certainly could do a good job for them in the slot. And safety, bit more of a questionable spot. D'Angelo Hall I've got starting, I think, just for the experience, but I think he's a bit of a liability in coverage at this stage in his career. And Sewer Cravens, who still a bit undecided on. I'm interested to see how he performs in the preseason. I think both of these spots are wide open. We could see just about anyone on that roster playing safety if they impress in camp. And at punter, Tress Way. So last year, his team just about missed out on the playoffs after a little bit of a collapse from Cousins at the end of the year, going 8-7-1. This year, I think they go 7-9. I think defensively, normally I offer a little summary, so I'll do that here. There's just a bit too much inexperience for me, particularly along that front. They haven't been great along the defensive front. Chris Baker, who'd been their best lineman over the last couple of seasons, is gone. Whilst I think Allen and McClain are more talented as a pair than what they've had, I think it will take a while for them to adjust to the NFL game. They've not been great against the run, and I'm not sure having a fresh group of linemen is the best way to combat that. The pass rush, again, you're relying on some younger players. Kerrigan can't do it all by himself. The inside backers, as I say, they're quite solid, but I just worry about how they might deal with, again, having that inexperience in front of them. I do think the secondary, you have to be concerned with that safety spot. I like them at corner, but with what I think is going to be a bit of a lack of a pass rush, some struggles against the against the run. I just look at this unit on paper and I think it looks quite good. I think it's going to take a while for things to click into place, and I think they'll play a lot better in the second half of the season. But I think that's going to sink them early on as teams kind of just prey on them a little bit. And I just think it ends up sabotaging their season. And on top of that, a lot of new faces on the offense, 2 new starting receivers. Effectively, Dotson's may as well be new, considering how little he was on the field last year. I think that will hurt them. Jackson and Garcon were both experienced players who developed a really good chemistry with Cousins. So I think this team I expect to be a bit slow out of the gate and maybe get it going toward the end of the year, but I don't think it'll be enough for them to make the playoffs at the end of the day. In terms of the schedule, I think the start of it is key. The Eagles in week 1, and then they've got the Raiders in week 3 and the Chiefs in week 4. I can easily see this team potentially going 1-3, and at that stage they go into the bye, and what I expect to be a tough division looks very difficult. I've said this about all the teams I've covered in the East, so I say the Eagles. Playing against the NFC West is a problem. Those are all decent teams capable of rushing the passer. Now, whilst the Redskins are as well suited as anyone to deal with that, I think those teams are all capable of causing problems. I do think the Redskins will get some wins within the division, but they do have a stretch where they play the Eagles, the Cowboys, the Seahawks, the Vikings, the Saints, the Giants, the Cowboys and the Chargers. None of those games jump out as particularly easy. Finishing with the Broncos, Giants, it's a tough schedule, and I just think for a young defence trying to find its way, I think it's going to offer some problems. And as I say, 7-9 is how I see this team finishing up. In order for that not to happen, though, and for them to be successful and possibly win the division, make the playoffs once again, I say once again like they made it last year, but make their way back there, I think the safety play, it needs to hold the back end together. I like the corner group. I think they could be very good. But it's a team that I've seen struggle against the run. I worry about the linebackers in coverage as well. As a result, I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on these safeties. They're going to have to play well to a decent standard, I think, to hold this group together, because I just think it's a very flawed unit. The new receivers are going to have to gel with Cousins quickly. That's been the identity of this team, is its passing attack the last couple of years, and losing 2 very productive receivers in Jackson and Garcon is going to hurt, and I think it will hurt them early. I think they've got probably more talented at the position overall, but I think for them to have a successful season, they're going to have to get on the same page very quickly. Otherwise, I don't think the run game is going to be able to carry them through any potential early season struggles. And the defensive line, they've just got to be better than they have. Got to stuff the run. It's been a big problem, especially when you look at, you've got the Cowboys in the division. Some of the teams they're playing against this year look like they're certainly going to be attempting to run the ball a lot. It's going to be a struggle. They're going to have to offer some support to Kerrigan. His team's not got enough rush overall as a front over the last few seasons, so they're going to need to improve. If all these areas come together, then yes, I can see the Redskins making a push. I've said it many times. This division is absolutely wide open. It's very difficult to predict, considering they've got to play against a tough division in the AFC West. There's always a possibility that even the Cowboys, who are probably going as the favourites, lose some games within that. It is anyone's game. I wouldn't be shocked if the Redskins made the playoffs. I just think that, considering all of the change at major positions, I think this is a season where they're undergoing a bit of a retooling, and it'll all end up coming together too little, too late for this team. So there you have it. That's my analysis of the 2017 Redskins. As always, let me know what you think, whether it's in the comment section below, whether it's the Cover Zero Facebook page, or you can find me on Twitter at Simon Conboy. Always happy to talk football. It's one of the reasons I do this at the end of the day. If you've enjoyed the show, check out some more. We're at the halfway point now. Going to cover the remaining 16 teams over the next few weeks as we start going through pre-season. There'll be a lot more, I think, X's and O's and interesting stuff that I'll be able to do once there's some actual games underway, so that's going to be good. And I'm hoping to have an announcement as to what we're going to be doing with the Friday episodes soon enough, and I hope you guys will tune in and check those out once they start happening. As always, if you could like, share, subscribe, check out the Patreon if you've enjoyed the show, be greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for watching. It is greatly appreciated. It's been a pleasure. Have a great evening, and go Bucks.